I just love how unhinged I become when I put the gloves on. Hey, I'm Athena, designer and stylist, and today we are doing part 3 of my glove series, my very favorite, pointy gloves. In the first video we made easy gloves, and in the second video we made scrunch gloves, and you don't need to have seen either of these videos for this one to make sense. It will stand on its own. This simple glove technique is one step above the classic drag method of tracing a part of your body. We're just going to step that up a little bit with a tiny amount of math. And before you get afraid of math, I say this all the time, math doesn't have to be scary. I like to do what's called tape measure math. And you may have heard me talk about this before. If you've seen some of my other videos, you might be familiar with it already. But basically, tape measure math is when you use folding to figure out fractions. So if you want to know what half of 11 is, you fold your tape measure at 11, and then you know, oh, look at that, it's 5.5. Or if you want to know what 11 times 2 is, then you can fold it the other way, and your tape measure will tell you that, look at that, it's 22. Tape measure math is all that we're going to need today, but if you want, go ahead and grab a calculator. I know it can be stressful if you're working with a material that you like, you want to know you're doing a good job. But I find this is very helpful for people who are intimidated by math in sewing. As always, I want to acknowledge that easy is a relative term, and something that's easy for me might be harder for someone else, because we all come to sewing and crafting with different ability levels. So if you have questions for me about how to make something more accessible, please reach out. And if you have any suggestions, please let me know. So other than your tape measure, potentially a calculator, you're going to need about half a yard of some fabric. When you are looking for fabrics for this project, choose a fabric that has a 4-way stretch. So what that means is, for example, this red stretch vinyl only stretches this way, but it doesn't stretch this way. So that means it's got a 2-way stretch, and what we need is a 4-way stretch. So for this project, I am using a lightweight jersey knit in this lovely pink, and this stretches, as you can see, this way, and also this way. So that's a 4-way stretch. To make gloves, I have used spandex, stretch vinyl, jersey knit, mesh. You can use anything that has a 4-way stretch, and you can and should get experimental with it. Other than your fabric, you're going to need a matching thread color. You are going to need paper, a pencil, a pair of scissors, and your sewing machine, and that should have you covered. So let's grab our materials and get started.
Measure the length of your arm from bicep to wrist and bicep to elbow, the circumference of your wrist, elbow, and then bicep. Now lay out a large piece of paper and draw a straight line, which will be your fold line. Then rest your pinky against the line and spread your fingers wide, tracing your hand. Now divide your wrist measurement by 2 and mark that at the wrist of your hand tracing. Measure across your palm, divide by 2, and mark that. Then do the same for your knuckles. Now divide the knuckle line by 4 and mark that along the line. Use your markings to refine your hand tracing, making the fingers a bit wider, and then taper the points of your fingers. I've decided to make my fingers 1.5 inches longer, but you can make them as long as you want. Center your ruler with the line of your finger and mark the extension with a point. Then connect the sides of your finger to the point. If you're making your fingers longer than mine, I suggest that you taper the ends so that they don't become too narrow to work with. Now, mark the length of your arm starting from the wrist, and mark your elbow point as well. Divide your elbow measurement by 2 and mark that on the elbow point. Then divide your bicep by 2, here you can see me doing tape measure math, and then mark that on the bicep point. Then connect the wrist to the elbow to the bicep, and taper off the pattern at the bicep so it ends on a right angle. Now cut out your pattern. Lay it on your folded fabric, Do not add seam allowance. Trace around your pattern with a marking tool of your choice. I am using a soft pencil. Pin the fabric around your markings, but not on the traced lines. And cut generously around your glove, leaving lots of excess fabric. Repeat for the other glove.
So when you bring this to your machine, it's really important that you don't trim away these seam allowances. Having this larger area of fabric to work with is going to make it so much easier when you're turning it to get to these really tight corners. And remember to take your time with this because we're not in a hurry. It's not a race, and you want to have a beautiful product in the end. So patience is really important.
Try your best not to stretch the fabric when you sew. And when you reach the ditch of your finger, insert your needle into the fabric, turn it, and then do a few stitches in the ditch of the finger. Insert your needle again, turn it, and then continue on your way. You're going to do the same thing when you reach the points of the fingers.
Now that we've got it all stitched, we're going to go ahead and finally trim away that excess fabric, pretty close to the seam line. Especially as we're getting up near these fingers where we want as little seam allowance as possible. But while you're doing this, be really careful not to cut the stitching itself.
I'm trimming about 1/4 of an inch away from the seam line, or even a little bit closer. But like I said, be very careful not to cut the stitching, especially because it's a zigzag stitch. At the tips of the fingers, I'm cutting off the corner there, so that I can have as little seam allowance as possible.
Now that we've got our glove cut out, it's time to turn it right side out. And since it's a glove, you can basically just shove your hand in it and do this. And then once you get to those fingers, this is what I like to do. I just kind of put my little fingy inside and pull it out. Okay, so now that I have them turned most of the way out, you're going to want to use a slightly pointed object to push out the points of the fingers. You can use what's called a point turner, which are these handy little tools that are great for turning corners and points. I can't find mine right now, so I'm going to very cautiously use my tiny scissors to do it. So I'm gonna get inside these fingers. If you're doing my method, please be careful, guys. You could also use a pencil, especially like a mechanical pencil that doesn't have any lead in it. And so we're gonna get into these points, which I've trimmed quite close, and just push them out. Okay. The moment of truth. It's time to try on the glove and see if you need to adjust your pattern by making it tighter anywhere. And let's see how we did. This fabric I chose is super soft and super stretchy, so it's gonna stretch a lot more than the vinyl gloves that I made. It honestly feels so comfy. I think this looks really great. I'm going to fix this little lump that happened on my pinky. And then I think I'm just gonna make it the tiniest bit more fitted at the top of the arm. But actually I'm really happy with how this came out. So I'm just gonna correct this one area here, but otherwise I'm very pleased with this. You know what? I could actually make it a little bit more fitted at the wrist too, which is going to help some of this bagginess on the other side. So just a little bit here, just a quick fix here, and then maybe just like 1/4 of an inch tighter at the top. But I love this.
Now, based on your fitting notes, transfer some markings onto your glove And then make sure you also transfer those markings to your pattern. But I would also remind you that every fabric you use to make these gloves is going to respond differently to the pattern. Now take it back to your sewing machine and stitch your alterations, and then go ahead and cut off the new excess that you've created. Now it's time to do my favorite part all over again and turn the glove.
All right, let's try it on again now that I have done my alterations and see how it fits. Yeah, I'm really pleased with that. It is exactly what I wanted it to be. All my dreams are coming true. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. I appreciate every subscriber I get because I'm a new channel. If you want to see more tutorials from me in 60 seconds or less, head on over to my TikTok at Athena Lawton. I am also on Instagram as at Athena Lawton. Go sew yourself something nice. You're worth it. I'll see you next time.